Afghans and their historical presence in Uzbekistan. Welcome to another episode exploring the rich and interconnected history of Central Asia. Today, we'll talk about the Afghan people and their historical presence in Uzbekistan. A story shaped by migration, trade, shared culture, and centuries of regional connections. The history of Afghans in Central Asia is much older than modern borders. Long before, Afghanistan and Uzbekistan existed as separate states. The people of these regions lived within the same civilization, traded along the same routes, and shared cultural traditions that continue to influence the region today. Who are the Afghans? The term Afghan can have two meanings. First, it can refer to any citizen or resident of Afghanistan, regardless of ethnicity. Second, it's traditionally referred to the Pashtun people, an Iranian-speaking ethnic group that forms one of the largest populations in Afghanistan. Pashtuns are mostly Sunni Muslims and speak Pashto language. Afghanistan itself is a multi-ethnic country. More than 20 ethnic groups live there, including Pashtuns, Hazaras, Tajiks, Uzbeks, Turkmen, Kazakhs, Jamshidis, and others. Interestingly, the word Afghan first appeared in written sources around 10th century, while by the 14th century it began to be used to refer the region, then later became the state of Afghanistan. Ancient shared history. The historical connection between northern Afghanistan and southern Uzbekistan go back thousands of years. During the second and first millennia BCE, the people of these territories were part of a single cultural and geographic region known as Bactria. Later, in the first century of the Common Era, the region became part of the powerful Kushan Empire, which stretched across much of Central Asia and South Asia. These areas shared early agricultural tradition and cultural roots stretching from Surkhandarya region in the modern of Uzbekistan to Balkh in Afghanistan. Only later, beginning in the middle of the first millennium BCE, these smaller political entities began to form, gradually developing into separate historical regions. Even then, these lands were often reunited within larger states, including the empire of Amir Timur and the Timurid dynasty. Afghans in Central Asian history. Historical documents show that Afghan women were present in Samarkand as slaves as early as the 16th century. In the 18th century, more than 2,000 Afghans served in the army of the Bukhara Khanate, where they worked mainly as riflemen and artillery soldiers. A larger wave of Afghan migration occurred in the 1860s during the internal conflict in Afghanistan. Many people fled northward into the Central Asian Khanates. Beginning in 1868, Afghans gradually appeared in the territory of Turkestan Governor Generalship of the Russian Empire. Some settled in Samarkand, where over time they became integrated into the local population. By the early 1870s, small group of Afghans were already living in Tashkent, and their number slowly increased. Afghan merchants and communities at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of 20th century, Afghans living in the cities of the Bukhara Emirate were often considered a temporary population. Many Afghan merchants lived in caravanserais and were active in trade. They imported Indian goods such as tea, indigo, and fine cotton fabrics, while exporting Russian manufactured products. Some Afghan traders eventually settled permanently, building homes, even forming second families. By the early 20th century, it's estimated that around 6 to 7,000 people from Afghanistan, including Hazaras, Jamshidis, and members of other tribes, were living across Turkestan. Education and social life. Before the events of the 1917 Russian Revolution, some Afghans in the region began to participate in local education systems. Children from wealthy Afghan families attended Muslim schools, Russian native schools, and even modern reformist institutions known as New Method schools. Some studied in Russian gymnasiums and preparatory classes. In the 1920s and 1930s, many Afghans in Uzbekistan continued to work in trade, while poorer migrants often worked in small service jobs or manual labor. In Tashkent, there was even Afghan club, which served as cultural center for the community. There, people could teach their children the Afghan language, discuss business matters, and maintain their cultural traditions. Afghans in the Soviet period. Despite strict migration control by Soviet government after 1917, some Afghans still migrated into Central Asia during the Russian Civil War. In February 1918, about 2,000 volunteers arrived in Bukhara from Afghanistan under the command of British officers to fight against local Bolsheviks and reformist groups. It's possible that some of these men remained in the region and eventually assimilated into the local population. By the early 1920s, Afghan communities were mainly found in parts of Bukhara and Samarkand region. Modern Afghan diaspora. In the late 20th century, particularly from the 1980s onward, a noticeable Afghan refugee diaspora began to form in Uzbekistan. The exact number of Afghans living in the country is difficult to determine because many were never officially registered. Some came as students and remained after completing their education. Others built families in Uzbekistan and now work in the service sector, small business, and trade. The history of Afghans in Uzbekistan reflects the deep and ancient connection between the peoples of Central Asia. From the ancient civilization of Bactria and the Kushan Empire to modern migration and diaspora communities, Afghans and Uzbeks have shared trade routes, cultural tradition, and historical experiences. These connections remind us that Central Asia has always been a region of movement, exchange, and cultural interaction, where the borders changed, but human ties remained